Okay, kids. I think I'm going to start. It's too bad we don't have more people here, but I'll be recording this so that we can share it with all the other students that didn't get our stupid message. Um, the exam is Tuesday at noon of next week. So you all have a week from tomorrow until the exam. Um, I have made a few little updates to the information on Remind. I've added a few more links, one new document, and I just want to show you what all that stuff is. Um, and then we'll be done unless you have questions. This shouldn't take very long. Um, First of all, if you wanted to make a screenshot, your plan for next week is this. Um, You've got maybe 1 day left to practice your free response questions. I've told you this before, I'll remind you that the free response questions is not to test your knowledge per se. It is to get in the habit of picking apart your questions and outlining your answers. Um, that would probably be done by tonight. You could stretch it a day or whatever. Um, on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, I'd like you to practice designing experiments. I'll show you, we have some information for that. On Wednesday, I'd like you to do all the math. And then starting Thursday, that's when you're going to take all the notes you've generated. Ideally, you'll stop learning big chunks of new info. And starting on the 8th, you've got like 4 days of cramming notes. I'll talk to you about how to do that in a minute. Um, I think if you were gonna study on Monday of next week, I would probably recommend that you definitely be done by this time. And I think it's ideal if you can stop by like 3 or 4 on Monday. And in those last 20 odd hours before the exam, I think you should try to do something physical that's kind of a big deal that gets you tired. Go for a huge bike ride or box a bear or I don't know, get like a really big workout. Do something super physical so you can just kind of get out of your head and feel your body a little bit. And then on Monday night of next week, if you don't come to my review, I'll tell you now, it's really important that you get a good night's sleep. The biggest improvement in academic performance among students taking a test like this one is whether they could sleep more than average. The biggest tax on academic performance, all other things being equal, is losing sleep. So you take a big pool of like 1,000 students, you rank them based on their academic average until a cumulative exam. And then you find all the kids that had about a similar academic performance and you change their amount of sleep. So the ones who sleep extra tend to perform better than you'd expect. The ones who sleep average tend to perform average, and the ones who sleep less than average tend to perform worse than you would expect. This tells us that no matter how much you've learned by Monday night, the variable that makes the biggest difference is how much you sleep. We can do the same experiments and control how much you study the night before, and more studying does not help you. More sleep helps you. So, Monday next week, I'll tell you this again in our review session. I want you guys to sleep like an hour earlier than you usually do. If your bedtime is midnight, I'd like you to go to sleep at 11. Hour extra. That's our plan. It's on the screen. Now, I want to show you a few things. In Unit 11 of Canvas, first of all, I've added last week's video, and in a few minutes, I'll add tonight's video. All of the resources are the same. But if you go to the part of the calendar that we're in, this part, I've added some links. So here's the link to AP Classroom if you want to do any more free response questions. Don't write out answers. It's not something you practice. You've already practiced. You don't need practice for that. The thing you do need to practice is just outlining your answers, picking apart the questions. Tomorrow for experimental design, if you hit this link, it takes you to this page, which gives you some steps of how to answer the experimental design questions. If we go back to Canvas, you can go to AP Classroom. AP Classroom will look like this. And in any given year, you can go to the exam and look through the questions. 1 in 3 will be an experimental design question. I'll give you an example. I'm going to the first set of questions from last year. And usually it's the first one. Researchers are studying blah, blah, blah. You've learned about dissolved oxygen. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, there you go. Here's your experimental design question. It says identify the dependent variable, a testable hypothesis, and what the control is. The good news is I wrote this at a college board session with one of the guys who writes the exams. I was trying to write this for students to do this type of question. And he's like, oh, this is really helpful. We're going to take this and make sure that everybody who writes the question sees this because it's a really good breakdown of the skills you're supposed to have. In other words, the cheat sheet that I made for my students has become a framing document for the people who write the questions. I can't promise anything, but I'm fairly confident that if you can do these steps, you'll be able to do this question and every other year's free response questions that have experimental design. That became common in 2018. So the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they've had one experimental design question in each question set. And this document I wrote you is all you need to get full credit on all of those questions. That's tomorrow. On Wednesday, I'd like you to do the math. If you go to the main review packet in Canvas, there's like maybe 20 practice math problems that you could work on. Some unit conversion, some percentages, some of that energy stuff. You've probably seen some rule of 70 questions here and there. But you'll notice scientific notation on here. I gotta tell you a story. Scientific notation used to be taught to all Santa Barbara High School, sorry, to all Santa Barbara Unified students in the 8th grade. Theoretically, you would have had this in junior high. And then in all of your other high school science classes, you would have done scientific notation. I just found out a couple months ago that, not on purpose, just by coincidence, that's been thinned out of all high school science classes. So there's like a few teachers that still do it because they know that it's a college level skill, but a bunch of our APES students have reached APES and they don't know scientific notation. So I made you something. There's this thing called a sheet to band-aid your scientific notation. It looks like this. and it's just a random Google Doc, but it has links like a YouTube video, some pretty basic um, practice, some more basic practice, and then the skills that you need for scientific notation, like multiplying and dividing scientific notation. If you're good at scientific notation, then good job. You've done it without Santa Barbara Unified. You could just skip what I just said and go here to practice. And if you can do all this, you're fine. But if you're not good at scientific notation, you'll probably need maybe 1 hour to go through the document I made you to sort of teach yourself scientific notation. It's not complicated. It's about moving the decimal and then multiply by the number of spaces. You'll see, it's pretty straightforward. And if you ever need help, you can come to my class and I'll help you. But anyway, that's on your math day. Some math practice in the review packet, and if you need it, some scientific notation stuff in that other sheet that I made for you. Then you've got 4 or 5 days when I need you to start going through your notes. And you're going to do a type of studying called laps, where you start at the front of Unit 1 and you'll go all the way through all the notes that you've assembled for the entire course. And what you're trying to accomplish is see if you know what your notes say. I'll give you an example. You go to assignment 1.1, and the first thing that you wrote at the top is Tragedy of the Commons. You could look at that where it says Tragedy of the Commons, put your paper down and ask yourself, do I know what Tragedy of the Commons is? Do I know what my notes say? And then you look at your notes, and like, if you knew what's already written there, you'll cross it off. That means it's already in your memory. You can recall that. If you look at your notes and you're like, oh, I didn't remember that, then do not cross it off. You'll go to the next question, something about underlying themes of environmental science or something, and you'll ask yourself, do I know what those were? And then you'll look at your notes and you'll be like, oh, yeah, I did know that, and you'll cross it off all the way through 10 units. The first lap through 10 units will probably take you a few hours. It's going to be a while. That's why you have 5 days. But anything that you remembered will be crossed off. So the second lap, you'll just skip everything that's crossed off and ask yourself, do I remember Tragedy of the Commons? Yes, fine. Do I remember? And you're only going to ask yourself the things that are not crossed off. You're eliminating from your passes the things that you already remember. So the first time, theoretically, let's say it takes you 5 hours to make a full pass through all your notes. The second time, it'll take you maybe 2 hours. The third time, it'll take you like 40 minutes. And there's probably going to be a few things that your brain just doesn't digest very well. So the fourth time, it'll probably be 40 minutes. And then the fifth time, it'll be like 35 minutes. And eventually, you just remember everything in your notes and you're done studying. I know that it's tempting to try to learn new stuff, but honestly, it's not advisable. There's a lot of brain science about this. I'm not the only person who would tell you that. Um, you can like learn a few new things, tapering off to no new things at the end of that 5 day period. But by the Sunday before the exam, a week from yesterday, honestly, like nothing new. Don't learn new stuff. And if you remember everything in your notes, you don't need to study. I call them laps. Each lap, you go through a unit and you ask yourself, do I remember? Do I remember? Do I remember? And everything that you do remember correctly gets crossed off so you don't have to ask yourself the next lap. You're reducing how much content passes through your eyes until everything's been crossed off. that's your full 1 week plan. Experimental design sounds intimidating because it's something that we don't really do in the class too much, but it really just comes down to like a couple of things that I think you'll be okay with. Controlled experiment, what a control group is, manipulated versus responding variable. Um, and then that cheat sheet I gave you, it's a really easy way to do all of them. By the way, that's a really great assignment to do with somebody else. If you've got homies that are actually like legitimately going to help you study, experimental design day tomorrow. That's a good day to work with another person. Math. If you have like another person and you guys can check each other's math, see if that helps you understand, that could work. When you get to studying, I don't usually recommend studying with somebody else, um, unless they're very serious. Most kids just distract each other or make out or whatever, but you really got to focus when you do that studying stuff. Um, okay. All the things that I just showed you, everything that I just showed you, it's all linked here. And everybody has access to Unit 11 because that's in your Canvas. Um, Last semester and this semester is all updated to look like this. Um, okay. I'm available if you have questions. I'm going to say, okay, good night. And then everybody's going to want to talk to me after I say that. Are you sure you don't have any questions? Kids, this is the week where it gets serious. Um, I think this is the part where you should really be actually like sincerely studying. Tonight, maybe 1 or 2 hours of practice FRQs. Experimental design, like a single question should take you 15 minutes. There's probably 8 of them in the maybe a dozen of them in AP Classroom. So 2 3 hours if you wanted to be like really focused and do every single one. Um, the math review depends how good you are at math. For kids that are really strong with math, it would take you 15 minutes. If you got to learn scientific notation, maybe an hour. If you really suck at math, maybe 2 or 3. And then that part where you start studying, I think by the time you reach the weekend, you should cancel all your plans. Make your mother breakfast on Mother's Day and then cancel all your plans. Um, it's a lot of content. You guys, I know you. I know every one of you. I can see you if I close my eyes. You're all very intelligent people. You should still study. Like, spend some time on that. It's a tough week. What else you want to know? I will end my recording